very important. We've been here 10 years like I have, listened to this, or whether you just got here. I think it's important to know what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Chairman Allen. I'd like to concur with that.
10 years like I have.
2011, and I felt like I had to make every meeting that I was on the committee. No, I did not miss one. Of course, that's a lot, but you know, I feel like that's my responsibility to be here in person. But we do thank all of you that have been faithful and committed in being in our meeting today. Today's a very important meeting, and we're going to hear from our Commissioner. Yes, sir. Senator McInnes. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just want to call attention to one of our first presenters here today, who's a legend in his own mind, his own time, who is from Richmond County. He's a native son of Richmond County, a Moorhead scholar. I don't know why he wanted to go to Chapel Hill. I've never been able to get that straightened out when he could have gone to state. But we're going to hear from our DMV commissioner, the Honorable and legendary Wayne Goodwin. And he is from Richmond County, went to Richmond Senior High School, was on the debate team down there, and will give some of his training from that this morning. We'll see the evidence of his training there, and I'm looking forward to having one of my former constituents and native sons of Richmond County here this morning.
Thank you, Senator McInnes, and it is good to have our commissioner with us today of DMV, Wayne Goodwin. And when I came in 2010, he was the insurance commissioner, I believe. Also served in the North Carolina House and did a lot of other things. And he's always been someone that was open. His door's always open if you have issues or problems. And we've talked some this year. And he's always been very receptive to helping us. So I would like to share that with you new members. If you have a problem, give him a call. He'll help you get it straightened out. And so we'd love to have you come speak with us this morning. We look forward to your presentation. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here with us.
Mr. Chair and co-chairs and vice chairs, members of the committee, colleagues, others, folks watching virtually and the like, good morning. As you heard, my name is Wayne Goodwin, and thank you, Senator McInnes, for that very unexpected but welcome intro. Appreciate that very, very much. And thank you all for the very kind invitation to join you today. It is a pleasure to be with you. It's been a long time since I've had the opportunity to speak before a legislative committee, and for those committee members and legislative staff who recall, to put a date on it, I was first elected to the House here 26 years ago. I was a lot younger then, and I was actually fairly young at that point, and did serve during my 4 terms, ultimately on the Appropriations Committee. And then shortly after that, my late wife, she succeeded me, and she served on the Appropriations Committee for 3 more terms. And then as we heard from the chairman, I did serve as insurance commissioner and presented before the full Appropriations Committee each year for 8 years. As the only former Council of State member that I believe has held the role of DMV commissioner, and I believe the only former legislator. We had some few people who became legislators after being DMV commissioner, but I think I'm the only former legislator to be in this role. It helps me help you as you make questions and make requests and inquiries on behalf of your office, your constituents, and the public, because I know where you're coming from, having been by and large in your shoes. And I believe that helping both you and your constituents is a paramount goal of mine, because your constituents and you are DMV customers. So I want to make sure that we provide even better customer service. I believe this is also the first time that DMV has presented formally to any committee in about 2 years. So this is a first in that regard. And I know we have some new legislators on the committee who'll be learning about DMV. Believe me, though, as you'll hear from my remarks and then from my colleague who will be getting into the details about the financials and the IT matters, DMV is much more than about driver licenses, IDs, plates, registrations, and titles. Now, today, your committee leadership have asked the DMV to present on a series of topics of great interest to you and the public. I certainly do not see this as a one-time discussion. I see it as a beginning of a dialogue, particularly for those that I haven't had a chance to speak with already. And so I will cover part of the presentation. Then, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I'll later ask our agency's IT subject matter expert, Rena Henry, to review the other items we've been asked to cover. Now, I began this role just a little over a year ago, about 13 months ago, as DMV commissioner, and knowing the history and the reputation and the challenges of the DMV, not only here in North Carolina, but in other states across the land. I did accept it as an opportunity to make needed improvements, relying in large part on that past service that we shared with you, and also looking at the efficiencies that are required and implementing smart, targeted modernization. Many of you that have been instrumental in those initiatives early on, and addressing the most pressing concerns. I look forward to your questions about a number of those concerns. You may have actually seen, heard about a major press announcement earlier in the week about some changes that I've implemented, and we've been making changes from day one. Last year and this year, we'll be making more. Now, as you'll see in this first slide, primary goals that I have set during this administration is to adopt policies and procedures and make changes and seek legislative guidance and assistance to achieve the following: shorten wait times, shorten lines, modernize our technology internally and for customers externally, to fill DMV examiner vacancies, also to protect customers from identity fraud, investigate fraud and theft, and provide more online service options for customers, and to improve customer service overall for individuals and businesses. Now, for me, I don't know how many baseball fans that we have here, but for me, baseball coaches that are in spring training talk about the hitting, running, and fielding as fundamentals. Well, these primary goals you see here on this slide, these are the fundamentals of a better DMV. We aim to make great strides on these goals, and just like in baseball, we plan to follow through. Some will be easier than others, but we will continue to make progress. And speaking of progress, we have made progress since 2022, but there's much more to do. And that's one reason why I'm thankful for your invitation today. Many of you, again, have heard about some of the changes. I had several members approach me this morning about changes that were in the news. They heard about it today, last night, the day before, and you have a copy, I believe, at your seats of a press release that outlines some of the changes that I believe you will find welcome. And those, again, are just a continuation. Now, over the last 13 months, I'm going to recognize my colleagues that are with me. For the last 13 months as commissioner, it's been quite a task, because there's a lot to study and absorb in terms of data, a lot of questions that the team and I have asked. We also looked at the dual impact of moving the DMV headquarters from Raleigh to Rocky Mount, and the labor market challenges for DMV overall, which are similar to public and private sector employers in many respects. Our team, since the last time we presented, have been interacting quite intensely with subject matter experts in the fields of law, IT, medicine, government, facilities management, law enforcement, corrections, and business. Strategized with our DOT Secretary, Eric Boyette, and it's a pleasure to work with him and our DMV senior management. Been learning about best practices among DMVs in the South and nationally. Been traveling the state in many of your districts. Look forward to coming back again with my undercover boss visits to see which driver license offices are working well and which ones need to work better. We have a lot of those offices that are doing that for, and also seeing what customers face, and that's very helpful. And speaking of customers, working since day one, helping those customers who need a headquarters to step in and look at their needs. And finally, over the last 13 months, working with you and staff and our subject matter experts to draft legislation and fine-tuning priorities, potential solutions, and meeting and conferring with each of you and stakeholders to find out how we become more efficient. Now, one of the first changes that we implemented was to reorganize the division, and implemented and instituted something that other agencies already had, but which we did not. And that is to align the duties within DMV with the appropriate direct report. So we created the role of Chief Deputy Commissioner and elevated Portia Manley, who is here to my left in the red. And she is our Chief Deputy Commissioner. We also added another Deputy Commissioner role, again, to provide oversight of key statutory tasks in our mission. And with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'm going to recognize my colleagues from DMV that are here, if that's okay with you. And I'm going to introduce the members of the DMV senior management, if that's okay. You've already seen Chief, and if you'll raise your hand if I mention your name, Chief Deputy Commissioner Portia Manley, Deputy Commissioner Charlotte Boyd Millette with Driver Services and the like, Deputy Commissioner Paula Winley, Vehicle Services, Deputy Commissioner Tim Hayworth, License and Theft Bureau, et cetera. It says Director Mike Newsom. Is Mike here? Okay. Also, and I'm not sure Director Keel, Jennifer Keel, she's okay. I believe we have Director of Business Operations Marvin Shelton in the back. We have Colonel Michael Oates with our License and Theft Bureau in the back there. And again, these are in no particular order. Patrick Anding from the Commissioner's Office. And I believe we may have our Senior Deputy General Counsel and former Judge Drew Marsh is here as well. And you will hear momentarily from Deputy Chief Information Officer Rena Henry. She is with DIT Transportation, assigned to DMV. And also DIT Transportation Business Officer Lee Roach is in the back. And if we get into the financials in great detail, he's the gentleman I would encourage us to confer with. And you already know Lee and Elle, who are our legislative liaisons there in the back. You may have a chance to meet with them. And I'm confident I missed somebody. My apologies to my team. Marty Homan is here with our communications team, and but all of them are great folks. As an aside, Mr. Chairman, the institutional knowledge and collective DMV service just of the chief deputy and two of the deputy commissioners surpasses 80 years. And when you throw in Director Keel, you have the institutional knowledge and history of about 110 years. And I am so thankful that they stuck it out and will continue to stick it out at DMV. Their dedication is stellar, and my other senior managers and DMV colleagues are equally impressive. Now, as you'll note, the accompanying slides, which I believe you have a printout of those, and the discussion, we have implemented multiple key changes and initiatives of mine. As you also will note, there are approximately 20 IT projects that DMV has either recently completed, has in the pipeline, or is preparing to move into that pipeline. Those initiatives and IT projects, many of which you're familiar with, help address in part or in whole the key goals outlined previously on this slide. And further, this presentation will address some HR questions regarding and pertaining to employment statistics within the DMV. I know you've heard me address that topic, and each of you, if you would like to have a PDF of the slides, we can provide that to you now. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll now review the slides that specifically cover items that we've been asked to touch upon, and thereafter Ms. Henry will pick up from there. Let's first talk about DMV human resources, and particularly DMV staffing and turnover. DMV vacancies have grown over the past 3 years. The pie chart that you see on the screen shows November 2019 and contrasts it with November 2022. You will note that in November of 2019, which again was about 4 months before the pandemic began, we had 184 vacancies in DMV. And then in November of 2022, we have 311 vacancies. And there are a number of individual or multiple causes for those vacancies, but I wanted to show you. So there's an increase overall of 127. And you may have noted from an earlier announcement this year that we are working steadfastly in reaching out and hiring folks. It's not as easy as the private sector, but we're making some progress. I believe last year just under 100 new examiners and came on board, and we also, I believe, had about 41 new hires since January 1st, but there's still much more work to do on that. Now, by county, this is the DMV vacancy rate by county, and you will note that using the legend there, the percentage vacant, if it's yellow, that's bad, because that means that there is that office don't have anybody working in those respective counties, and you'll see by and large the vacancy rates hover between 0% to roughly 30%. Depending upon the county, and you'll obviously recognize your respective counties from your district. We also have these broken down individually. We can send to you by highway division if you'd like to compare. And of course, some of the metro counties have larger offices. The ex-urban and rural counties have the smaller offices, and vacancies have differing impact on the size of on the work of the office. But if you have a smaller office and you have one vacancy and then somebody's out sick, you're in tough situation because you are required to make bank deposits and there's the requisite lunch period. So that's why it's important for us to fill these vacancies all across the state. In terms of why folks are departing these positions, their voluntary separations have increased, at least during the 2021-22 period. You'll see that there is an increase of 22 who voluntarily chose. We also seen retirements, and you're going to see there's a concern about retirements coming up, but just for the contrasting periods, retirements are always a component of our staffing concerns, but I'm mostly concerned about the folks that are leaving because of, as we've learned from exit interviews, they have better opportunities. We certainly wish them well, but we've invested in training, and sometimes they've been with us for years and they're able to find other ways to earn a better living elsewhere. So we want to make sure we help address those market concerns. You'll see here that also, it's kind of hard to read it here on the screen, but you can read it on the slides in terms of the separations by job family. In other words, in what sectors of DMV did we have folks leaving those positions? And you can again compare the 2018 and 19 to the 2021, 2022. Many of these program management and is that, well, I guess that includes, I guess, our DMV examiners. That would be Deputy Commissioner Boyd Millett. That would be program management. And those are part of the most forward-facing components of DMV. Speaking of retirement, this is something that is of concern to me as our current DMV commissioner, is that we have the potential to see retirements quintuple 5 times of an increase in the next 5 years. And as you'll see here, that we have about 283 of our colleagues are eligible for retirement within 5 years. And then other 53 are eligible now. And again, thankful for our senior management who decided to stick it out whenever they could have already retired some years ago. In terms of the breakdown of where the retirements have been, program management, again, we're talking about the examiners and the folks in the forward-facing, public-facing offices by and large. I'm very thankful that our legislators here, Governor Cooper, the Office of State Human Resources, and Secretary Boyette worked together to implement something not only to help DOT and other agencies, but particularly DMV, and that is to provide hiring bonuses for hard-to-fill positions. This is yet another example where state government can imitate the private sector. I mean, there's not a day I don't go by some restaurant or any private business and they offer hiring bonuses. And this is the same that we've tried here. We just started this a few months ago. You will see the criteria for who's eligible for these particular hiring bonuses. And again, it's to aid recruitment. We also have retention bonuses because we also don't want to lose people after we have hired them and trained them and benefit from their experience. The bonuses are spread out over time for obvious reasons and other reasons. And you'll see the eligibility requirements there at the bottom. Here, in terms of the positions, the roles eligible for bonuses at DOT, the ones in yellow are the positions at DMV, and you'll see the dollar amounts. The hiring bonuses hover between $1,500 and $2,000. You also note on the side there, because I've had this question from legislators too, in the public, is that the starting pay for a driver's license examiner is $40,000, and then the mid-range is $44,000. This is increased in the last year by $6,000, and I think that's also helping us with our recruitment. But there again, there's much more to do. In terms of, we also during the move, I referenced we moved to Rocky Mount at the direction of the legislature and the Council of State, and the concern was we lost a lot of folks during that move. As you know, it's at least for me, it's about a 55-minute drive, but for many of the employees who had worked for DMV for a long time, it was anywhere from over an hour and a half to just under an hour one way. So there are some retention bonuses for folks at headquarters who also stuck it out through the increase in gas costs. And those, you'll see those added up to $97,500 for those particular positions. We are continuing to reach out to the public, and we're hiring. So if you know somebody who's looking for work and would like to work for the state and is a people person, they need to come to see me and to see the DMV, because we need you. We, in addition to having a job fair at the most recent transportation summit, you'll see we have fairs going on in February and March and April, and we do this throughout the year. And but I am serious. We are hiring. We'd like to, and we need your help. And this is not in my notes, but I've shared this with many of you, and you'll be getting a letter soon to give more details. I'd like to visit with you specifically in your districts and have like a DMV day where we can go to meet with your constituents. If you want to have an opportunity for a local job fair, we participate with you on that. And also we can work together and meet with your constituents that are at the DMV and hear what's on their minds. And so just let me know if you're interested in that. That also helps get the word out to your community and your district about the vital role DMV provides and what our needs are, and that a lot of those needs can be met by more personnel. All right, most of the requests that I received, Mr. Chair, and from the public as well, pertain to our driver's license offices. And we got several key things, some changes that are coming up, and these are in no particular order. And I'm very excited about the kiosk pilot initiative. Part of modernization means using technology and more tools to help people obtain services they need outside of an office. Of course, you're familiar, we've had the Pay It and other things online. Folks can renew and request services online, but not everybody either wants to or can go to a physical office. And some other states have already experimented with this. And my team and I, we've directed that putting together 20 kiosks at strategic locations around the state. They would go to grocery stores, pharmacies, the military bases here. And if they are received well, and the statistics bear it out, we would multiply these significantly, and that will provide more opportunities for folks to get services without being in line at a driver license office. These devices, and as you'll see, this is from an example from Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, California. There's multiple states. Indiana, I'll give you an example. Indiana implemented this, and their governor of Indiana reported that in the first year, 50,000 transactions were through their kiosks. And that's Indiana's a smaller state than us. And I think we could see that play out here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is it appropriate to have questions, or you want to hold them?
If it's a burning question,
It's pretty burning.
okay, then we'll.
So, Mr. Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
I think at some point in time, we've tried this before and it went over like a deflated balloon. Is there something out there? And I'm not being critical of what you're trying to do.
Yes, sir.
I'm for anything we do, because I get the same calls you get.
Yes, sir.
And most of those people are unhappy,
Yes, sir.
and I don't blame them.
I don't blame
If
you.
I had an appointment at 1 o'clock and they saw me at 2, I'd be past unhappy.
Yes, sir.
So is there not some way, and this is something I was thinking about last night, is there not some way that this same technology that we're going to employ here, this pilot program, couldn't be done with an app on one's phone or computer? And just throwing that out for conversation.
And Mr. Chair, one of the key differences with this and the prior kiosks, which predate me by many years,
Right.
is that, and Chief Deputy Manley can back me up, those other kiosks, guess where they were placed? They were placed inside the driver license offices. The difference here is that we're putting them in the community. And you see kiosks for various things that the state provides and the other entities provide. And that's a key difference, is that putting them where people are going to be, and not having to be at the driver license office. And that's another thing. Whenever they were at the driver license office, as I understand it before, when the office closed, nobody could access the kiosks.
Oh, yeah.
So this will be 24/7, depending upon the location that they're in.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
And
sir.
then the pilot exercise is at no cost initiative to the state.
Correct.
I always worry when I see that, because there ain't no free lunch. Could you give a little short blurb on how that can be?
This is based upon what we've heard from other states, and typically there is a transaction fee, just like there's a transaction fee when you use your phone to access DMV and other services. So that's where many of the entities, how they cover their costs is through the transaction fee. And just think about when you have Indiana, only had 50,000 transactions in 1 year. That's a lot of fees. Again, that's not the state doesn't bear the cost, at least presently. That's the way we're looking at.
Yes, sir.
May I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Very excited about this, and if things go well after we have had them in place for a while, then I'd love to see these multiplied around North Carolina. We've also worked with other populations who need DMV services as folks are reentering society from the correctional institutions across the state. It's important that they have new reentry identification cards, and we're working with them to ensure that anybody who's released has an authenticated ID so that they can begin working and being contributing members of society as soon as they can after they leave a facility. And we've kicked off the manual process, and we are working towards automating it for later this year. You've already heard this in terms of advancements last year. And Senator McKinnis talked about this, and I've referenced it too. I think probably everybody around this table and folks who are watching have a device like I've got in my hand here, smartphone. And as we know, folks do not like waiting in line anywhere. Folks do not like being anywhere any longer than they have to. And we implemented years ago the appointments process. And what you can do when you check in, you use your smartphone, you scan the QR code, it checks you in, and then you can go somewhere else. You don't have to wait in line. You can wait in your car, you get some coffee, get a sandwich, go visit somebody down the street a little bit, and you'll get a message that it's time to come back when it's your time. This particular description is fairly technical, but the Queue Anywhere is what that is, and that's using the QR codes. And we'll be happy to provide more details about how that's implemented. Not every location uses them, but the busiest locations have those. Now, what about folks who don't have a smartphone? Because I know there are people who don't have a smartphone. And this is still in the early stages, but having visited myself, restaurants where they have one of these devices, it's a pager, vibrates, lights up, makes noise, it lets you know when it's your turn. We've started rolling those out last year at key locations, and there's still some bugs to work out in it, but I think that's an opportunity for us to help folks who don't have a smartphone, but who also don't want to wait in line. One of the challenges, Mr. Chair and members, a good many folks, even though they're using the Queue Anywhere and their smartphone or the pagers, they still want to wait in line. And we've got to get the word out better that trust it. You're going to get a signal whenever it's time to go to the lobby. So that's a complicating factor, is that there's still folks that are getting in line physically, even though they could go somewhere else with this technology. So we're going to work further in reminding folks about how this works. Now, last year and just this week, I'm very pleased to announce, and you have a copy of this press release that references it, is that I've announced extended hours and expanded walk-in services. If there's one thing which I've heard from the public, is that they want more walk-in capability. Now, there was a time when, both before the pandemic, especially during the pandemic, when it was necessary to have an appointment system. And there are reasons to have in-person appointments. Some people would, just like when you go to the doctor, if you need to make an appointment, you don't get seen that day, but you get seen at a day certain at some point down the road. When you know you go in, you get your service. Other people don't like to make appointments. They just like to roll the dice and show up whenever if it's best for their schedule. I determined, and the team has determined, because there are 25% of people with appointments are no-shows, and the fact that there are no-shows for appointments impacts our walk-ins and impacts other people who really and truly need the appointments, we decided to adjust it to where we only will do appointments in the morning, and then we'll open up the afternoons for walk-ins. And then in locations in the morning where they do have vacancies or things have sped up, walk-ins can get service too. Now, it's going to take some time to roll this out, to get the word out. And we already have, I believe, in place online, when folks schedule appointments, it recognizes that you only can make the appointments in the morning. In addition to that change, we've extended driver license office hours. This is using there was a particular fund that we're drawing from that, what's the state fiscal, the recovery fund. Thank you, Martin. The recovery fund to help us. Last year, we extended office hours at 35 locations based upon the number of transactions and to try to have it geographically spread out. And this week, we announced we've added 5 more. And as we hire more examiners, we can extend that further. Ultimately, instead of opening at 8, we're opening at 7. Gives more of time for folks to get services. And just to share with this committee, and I spoke with Secretary Boyette, again, subject to the continued hiring, is that ideally, as commissioner, I'd love to have it 7 to 7, have an overlap, but right now it's 7 to 5. We're also having increasing walk-in availability for unscheduled services, and you'll see those listed there. And then, as we did last year, I wanted to go ahead and announce that our Saturday hours will begin June 3rd. It would have started earlier, but Memorial Day weekend is just before that. There'll be 16 driver license offices, and they'll go from 8 to 12, kicking off peak season. All of these are intended to increase the overall service capacity and mitigate standing lines that accumulate at driver license offices. And I'll tell you, as I've traveled the state, it's been interesting to see how this works. Like I was at one of the offices here in Raleigh yesterday. You think there'll be lines out the door? There were no lines. And then who knows? I bet if I went by there now, there might be one. It's interesting how it ebbs and flows. We'll get a complaint one day about a long line, and then I'll receive a kudos from somebody who said that it's the fastest service they've gotten at the same location the very next day. It's interesting, but we want to provide more walk-in availability and hire more and more folks to help provide that walk-in availability and appointments as needed. We also worked on, and these are again initiatives that I've been working on, the objective of the contact center is to improve customers' experience when they engage with our call centers and providing quality service in a timely manner. And you'll learn more about our systems, stars, saddles, and lights, and so on that you'll hear from Ms. Henry. But using the contact center, we provide now a chat or a chat bot that helps relay a person calling in ultimately to the appropriate subject matter expert. There's interactive voice response, there's callback assistance, there's screen pop-ups, there's email deflection and the like. So this is very important for folks who are calling in to get answers to their questions. Now, the MyDMV portal to the Pay It platform, this objective is to migrate the existing North Carolina MyDMV portal along with the functionalities to the Pay It portal. This goes back again to folks who are online requesting services and paying services. We use Pay It, as you know. This will also provide citizens with additional security and enhance customer service. And as you can imagine, anything online these days, you have to continually upgrade your security to ensure that the system avoids hackers and the like. The business goals that we met with this particular initiative is that you'll have one location for all online services, which is a good thing, and that with an enhanced the information that folks who are drivers or who have vehicle questions, concerns can get all their information securely through an enhanced login. We're also moving driving records to Pay It. There are folks who request copies of their driving record, and this will migrate those records to the Pay It portal platform too. Now, you are familiar with House Bill 650, and I've referenced that. This is also a significant part of how do we speed up the necessary modernization. House Bill 650 became part of Session Law 2021-134, and in particular the Section 11, where it has a limited exemption from DIT oversight and requirements for DMV technology modernization. And to that, and this is obviously in 2021, I started in January of 2022. And over the course of the last year, as I got to learn more about how this could be helpful to get projects more quickly into the system to help customers, we just recently finalized our 5 projects. This particular provision says we can pick 5 projects, and those are recognized here. Now, I do believe that we've moved the kiosk one from this. Is that right, Rena? So the ones that are in blue are the ones that make up the selected projects, and be happy to provide more details about those if there are questions about them. The key, though, is trying to modernize more quickly and with the appropriate oversight. And of course, there's my contact information, as you heard from the chair and from Senator. If you call me, text me, email me, I'll help any way I can. And if you need me to meet with you in your district, or meet with you in your office, or meet with you and your constituents, please let me know. And with that, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you wanted me to proceed with Ms. Henry, or if you want to do questions first.
I'll tell you what, let's go ahead, if it's okay with the committee, and ask questions of Commissioner now, if we could. Representative McInnes.
Thank you. I'm still a senator. I appreciate that.
Oh,
Thank you. I'm messing with you, Mr. Chairman. I'm messing with you, Mr. Chairman.
Especially since you talked bad about my target.
So, Mr. Commissioner, the thing that is just burning in my soul with all the modernization that we're trying to do, and I applaud you for it. What do you know or believe is the most required operation of a citizen that could be handled online that's not handled online? So if there's something that we're not able to do online at all because of whatever, do you have an opinion as to what that might be? I think that's our biggest challenge. We got simple things that people can't do online because the technology might not have caught up with it or whatever. But you got an opinion on that?
From what I understand, the services that are in greatest demand that can be put online are online. But with the announcement this week, there are a couple of items we've added to online services you couldn't get previously. Folks who had expired licenses or expired ID cards, and they now can actually help renew those online. So every step of the way, we're looking for where else can we put online. There are some services we just can't put online because there's security requirements, or the law requires folks to be in person. Going back to another question you asked earlier about the kiosks, and I forgot to mention this. Another difference for why these kiosks will help is that these will print out your stickers for ultimately your stickers for your plates and things that you can't have printed out on your home printer if you're using your smartphone.
Follow. And then one other thing that we've been working on here in the General Assembly is to expand the opportunities for our mustered out members of the military to pair them with state jobs.
Yes,
because they're properly trained, they're ready to go. They don't need, they got maturity and discipline, and structure and organization in their life, and they make excellent employees. I don't know where y'all have reached out to them or not, but I strongly suggest that you do.
And Mr. Chair, thank you, Senator. There is pursuant to an executive order from Governor Cooper from last year, we've enhanced our outreach efforts and regularly and have, in fact, hired based upon veteran preferences. And you're exactly right. In fact, if they don't mind, I think Deputy Commissioner Boyd Millette, I think you have served, and we have other members in senior management who have served in the military, and we welcome and thank them for that service, but also continuing their service to the state.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, Representative Loftus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner
Yes,
Goodwin. Thank you for your time you spent with me in my office and helping me to learn more about how to answer those questions in my district. You are welcome any day you want to come to Gaston County.
Yes, sir.
We will buy you a cup of coffee and a donut and wait in line with the masses that are outside. So you're
Your
welcome
fine
to come
constituents.
there. So, and we'll do a DMV day. We'll try to drum up enough places that we can go and find you some warm bodies that are productive to help us.
Yes, sir.
So I have a couple. You and I have talked about how do we get more opportunities for people to become employed with DMV. I mentioned to you, have you reached out? Is there a possibility of using staffing services? Is that way to identify people that you want to keep and rotate people who may not work out? And that was due to personal information that might be sensitive. I think most of DMV stuff is kind of online anyway. I'm just trying to find you people to come into your facility to help eliminate the loads. So is that still an option? The second one I would entertain, is it possible to, like we do tags, you provide a contract with a private contractor who does tags? Why not provide a contract that could possibly eliminate staffing, which is the biggest cost? But it could open up an opportunity for an entrepreneur to operate under the government guidelines, just like a tag place, that we could do DMV services. And the last thing, if you'll address, I read recently about personalized license plates that was very disturbing for me. That you had erased some 200 or so license plates that have been blocked. Would you address that with this committee? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, I've noted here there are three questions, three parts to your question. On the first item, employment services, our HR for DOT and our folks who are with HR through DMV rely upon at least one, if not two, of the employment services that the NC Works, and there may be another one that we rely upon, Temp Solutions. We are certainly looking at any and all options to go beyond that, but the employment services, those agencies also having difficulty finding folks to fill these positions. Given the sensitive data, the personal identifying information that DMV necessarily is involved with and handles, there are many folks who apply who are not eligible because of their background checks. So that's been, and of course that happens with private sector too. But we are looking at any and other opportunities to have employment services. But right now we are using the two, Temp Solutions and NC Work. On the second item about, you mentioned about, I believe you were referencing how we have our license plate agencies. Mr. Chair, as each of you know, the legislature decades ago established a different system by and large for license plate agencies. Those are operated by private contractors who've been vetted and approved by the DMV and are overseen by the DMV. With the exception, there are several locations, several license plate agencies that are state run by law. And your question, I believe, as I heard it, is why can't we have that for driver license offices? It again pertains to you're dealing with a lot more significant data and the fact that this is a state responsibility. Now, it's ultimately the authority this committee has to address that, but decades ago, that was the bifurcation. Driver license offices, predominantly contractors overseen by the state, driver license offices, state employees. Based on my observation is that even if it were properly run, the solution for those folks, they're going to pay their employees more. So is the state so if the state can have its own employees and pay them well and according to labor market standards, private sector's going to do the same thing. So they're not going to be hiring folks at a lower cost. They're going to actually be paying more. And I don't know if the state wishes to do that. That's your call. Final question that you asked, Mr. Chair. You mentioned about the personalized plates. These only exist because of the legislature. I remember when I was in the House, several of us would vote against them every time, and they have proliferated various, allowing various plates, special plates, personalized plates, and the like. It was brought to our attention about a particular plate that made national news, made late night comedy shows, and how it slipped through the cracks of the system that's in place. So I ordered a review of the process. How do we handle personalized special or vanity plates is another word for it. How do those work? And when people apply for those, they submit what they request. It could be a combination of letters, could be a word, could be words and symbols that spell out something. And I found out, to my surprise, just like other states, they have a do not issue list or a prohibited list. About 9,500 entries on there based upon requests over the years, based upon what other states have prohibited. And the plates are state property, by the way. So that's another point too. They're not personal property, they're state property. When reviewing the list, it was besides understanding what process is used to determine if a plate is approved or not, we determined that based upon some Supreme Court rulings and by a recent action of the U.S. Congress, that some of the plates that were prohibited should be removed from the prohibited list. Because, and I'll be happy to go into details about that, about 234 or so that were removed from the prohibition list. Some of them were removed from that prohibition list because of the U.S. Supreme Court and the Congress has ruled on equality and marriage. And so we addressed that to make sure that the state didn't get sued, and also what was appropriate and fair and right based upon rulings of the Congress and of the state. But we've also found that there are many people, whether intentionally or nefariously, or maybe as a joke to them, but it's not a joke to others, have requested plates that either have offensive language, racist language, language that would not be acceptable. Even I had an editor of the newspaper who had said that you should let people put whatever they want to put on their plate if they're having a personalized plate. I said, well, first of all, these are state plates. And second, if you're not willing to print those same words in your family newspaper, are you saying you want those words or phrases to be on the state plates? So that's what's happened lately is trying to have a better system and remove from the highways plates that are anti-Semitic, that are racist, that are homophobic, that are anti-women, that are just hate. And we pride ourselves, Mr. Chair, in being a welcoming state, and we're growing by leaps and bounds. It was 300 people a day moved to Raleigh alone, I believe. And if people and children see some plates on the highways that say things, and that would be opposite of welcoming people to North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
I want to remind everybody, we do have to be out by 10 o'clock, but Senator Lazar and also Representative Eiler after him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. I just have a couple questions in regards to the employment. You alluded to the bonuses earlier. Are those bonuses working, and how many positions have you filled since the bonuses have been implemented? Do you have any idea?
We will need to get some specific data back to you. I believe it's too early for us to have meaningful data.
Okay.
I believe Chief was in the fall when we began these bonuses. So we are hiring folks with bonuses, but I believe if I may report back to you,
no problem.
Once we've been in place 6 months or a year.
No problem. And then the other question I have is in regards to the FTEs, the positions that are open. So those positions are funded positions and they're open positions. What is done with that revenue that sits there for those positions?
I would need to ask our Marvin, who's our business operations, so maybe Mr. Chair, can he come forward to the mic back there to answer that?
That would be fine. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And while he's coming to the mic, Mr. Chair, I know y'all are anxious to hear from Ms. Henry. She has some awesome information to share with you whenever the chair decides.
That was my final question.
Okay, and then we'll get to Chairman Allen after he presents.
I have the question again concerning I think it's lapsed salaries you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, right now lapsed salaries are right now being used if we need them to run DMV right now, because right now lapsed salaries can only be used at this time for any use in DMV. I know right now we cannot use it to increase the salaries at this time. There's other salaries that can use to increase salaries too, that is given to us. But when it's in each month, we get a report to show what the lapsed salaries are. And we wait to see what we need use to run the Division of Motor Vehicles. And then at the end of the year, I assume that money is given back to DOT.
Staff will speak to that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, the lapsed salaries may be used for one-time expenses. It cannot be used for recurring expenses, so such as a contract or something that would be needed. And then the funds do revert back to DOT at the end of the year. They don't go back to the general fund, so it remains in DOT's funds.
Chairman Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we go back to the old insurance committee, where I think we gave the commissioner a ability to negotiate insurance rates instead of just up or down. So I appreciate what the commissioner's done in all these jobs. Two quick ones, probably yes and no. Is somebody going to address the CDL issue? Some of our people are asking about the CDL license being taken forever to get processed or whatever, and the tests and so forth. And then the LPA fees. In other words, we increased the LPA fees for a number of years. Is there a position on the LPA fees at this point from DMV?
On well, the CDL, I would need to ask our Deputy Commissioner Boyd Millette.
I may be jumping ahead.
Okay, and then also LPA fees would have Deputy Commissioner Winley, maybe after the committee, Mr. Chair, maybe they can confer. Because I'm anxious for Ms. Henry to make her presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, sir.
At this time, we're gonna have Ms. Henry, Deputy Chief Information Officer, to do the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
What's an LPA fee? For us that don't know the acronym,
License plate agency. That's the private agency. They get a fee, which is described in law.
I want to remind everybody, let's go through the chairman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am Rena Henry, Deputy CIO for DMV, and I am going to speak to how DIT transportation supports the DMV application systems. Okay, so the Division of Motor Vehicle has many functions that require application support. These functions include, but are not limited to, vehicle registration, driver's license, enforcement, IRP, lights, and those things. I'm gonna go through and describe those four major divisions, those major systems, as well as talk about some of the interfaces and the other things that are incorporated in our very complex DMV application systems. The first one being our state automated driver's license system. That is what we refer to commonly as saddles, and that supports our day-to-day functions of issuing a credential to the citizens of North Carolina, as well as ID cards. So that's a driver's license and ID cards. The next major system is our state titling and registration system, commonly referred to as STARS. That supports our DMV vehicle services application that works with license plates for vehicles owned by our citizens, businesses, and other organizations, both public and private in North Carolina. And this application also interfaces with our tax and tags. We now have an interface with DOR, where we collect property taxes through our STAR system. The next application is our liability insurance tracking and enforcement system, referred to as LIGHTS. International registration plan, referred to as IRP. Motor carrier, referred to as MC, and traffic records. And these are grouped into four major areas because that's how we divide them within DMV applications from under the IT division. And this unit right here supports interstate and intrastate commercial motor vehicles, provides automated processes to collect vehicle crash reports, and analyze crash data. And they're responsible for ensuring that registered owners of motor vehicles in the state of North Carolina maintain the proper level of liability insurance coverage. The next major area is enforcements and emissions. That supports the license and theft unit in enforcing the general statutes, as well as our state highway patrol. And this is also the unit that handles our emissions, where we all go and get our cars inspected on a yearly basis. Okay, the DMV application systems is a very complex system, and you'll see a slide shortly that kind of demonstrates that complexity. We interface with many internal and external, we have many internal and external interfaces. And these internal and external interfaces are required for us to be able to continue to issue driver's licenses, as well as our vehicle services tags and tags. And approximately about 50 state, federal, and 50 state, federal, and law enforcement connect with our NCDMV systems. Some of those being AOC, Administrative Office of the Courts, Board of Elections, our voter applications, our law enforcement, CJ Lees and DCI, and of course, I've already mentioned Department of Revenue. And this screen just demonstrates the complexity of some of our DMV internal interfaces. I'm not going to go through those, but we just wanted to give you an idea. People ask us, why does it take so long to implement things? And when we provide estimates on why does it take so long, because we have to make sure that when we make a change to the system based on legislative mandates or federal mandates, or just new initiatives to modernize DMV applications, that all of those interfaces continue to operate. If one of those fail, we could not be compliant with Real ID. We could be out of compliance with other statutes that we have to continue to maintain and enforce in our systems. And this is just a couple of our external interfaces that we have. And I just wanted to demonstrate that as well. Just a little bit of the DMV application system history. I'm not going to go through it, but we have been, we implemented what we call saddles and stars in the DMV application systems back in 1995. And we have gone through a gamut of changes over the years to support legislative changes, federal changes, and try to make improvements to better serve our citizens of North Carolina. And this is a continuation of that history. The next slide. I'm sorry. Okay. The next slide is the saddles replacement history. That was one of the big projects that we've been discussing for a number of years. It started with an RFP for us to, well, it started as a legislation for us to replace stars and saddles. Then it changed, the direction changed. We were told to change it from a stars replacement to focus on saddles. We started discussing how can we replace saddles, which is the heart. Saddles is your driver's license application. So that's where all your citizen information is stored and captured. So we consider saddles the heart of the system, but everything else interfaces. So saddles being your customer record, where I verify your identity and make sure you are who you say you are, thus Real ID compliance. Saddles has to be, with saddles, modifying saddles means we have to go back to that slide where I had all of those pictures in there and say, okay, if I touch saddles, how does that impact everything else? So we've been going through and trying to look at how do we replace saddles and not hurt everything else, not make all those the arms and the legs and everything else work. And in doing so, this timeline kind of talks about that. And Chief Manley and I had the opportunity to visit Texas because we were kind of mimicking Texas. They did refactoring a couple of years ago, and we were trying to follow suit. So we did a limited scope RFP using our DIT contract. The vendors there were only 2 vendors that applied, and those 2 vendors did not meet our requirements, both some of our business requirements as well as security requirements. So we've taken a step back because what we don't want to do is try to force a solution into, creating a solution that is not going to be beneficial and that's going to be very costly to the state. So with that in mind, here are some of the projects that the commissioner spoke about. This is just a list of projects that are currently active at this time and a planned implementation date. And you can see that we have a current cost estimate total in that second column. That is just an estimate. We will, as we run through projects, we will continue on a monthly basis report on what is actually being spent on each project to date. So as of January, this is the total project cost for these projects that are listed here. And we have a projected planned finish date, but planned finish date is what it is when we estimate it in the beginning. But other things can come into play that will force us to have to modify that date, and we'll put in a change request. Those things could be resource issues or priorities changing within the division, as well as the complexity of the solution. We're estimating it when you give us a bill, we estimate it in that short time period based on limited knowledge at that time. But we try to do as thorough of an estimate as we can to provide you with enough information to say, this is very complex. We need the time we're asking for to complete these solutions in order to keep the heart and the body running. And these are some other projects that are still in flight, currently in flight right now. And this is the DMV modernization budget. This is where we have our budget officer and the IT team provides an estimate, and we keep a total running track of that funding source. And if you can see on the first four lines, saddles refactoring, the stars estimated by Gartner, lights estimated by Gartner, and the Gartner contract, those all involve the replacement of our DMV application systems. So that funding is still sitting there available for us to use as we prepare to look at market research on, is there a solution out there that could replace our entire DMV application systems, as opposed to trying to pull out the heart, replace it, and put it back. That's what we're in the process of doing based on a visit to Texas and to speaking to some other jurisdictions when we attend conferences on the complexity of trying to refactor code in place. Because we want to, when we make these modifications to the system, we don't want to just make the system do what it's doing today, but we want to move forward, make it more modern, make it easier to use. Those systems have been out there for a while. Our systems are still running. That mainframe runs. That mainframe issues things out of sub-second, out of the box. So we have to make sure that response time is still very prevalent to our end users. We cannot impact the driver's license offices where they may be able to issue a credential from start to finish in less than 10 minutes. We can impact that by making modifications that will lengthen that time and lengthen a citizen's time in the offices. That's not only on the driver's license side, but it's also on the LPA side as well, because we support both of those. And that is the end of my presentation, but I was asked to state that the presentation is online. So you will have a copy of that presentation.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Henry while we're here? Representative
Rudow, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious if y'all have numbers on the number of people served in office, in person, number of people served online. I don't know if those are available, but we're interested to see kind of how does that mark the success of some of your app-based services?
We can provide that.
Great.
We don't have those numbers handy, but we can provide that.
Yes, sir, Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it may not be a question for you, but I remember one of my trips to my local DMV to find out how we could be more supportive. The DMV staff told me that they were shut down for 3 hours for maintenance during a prime time of people standing outside. And normally, I think those are done between 12 at night, 6 in the morning. Is that a trend, or does anybody have that information that we don't schedule that?
So we schedule our maintenance window. Our maintenance window is Sunday morning from 4 a.m. to 12.
That's pretty dead about that time, right?
Correct. So if that happened, that was an exception, not the rule. And I can assure you that if that driver's license office was down for that 3-hour window, everybody in IT was looking to see what was the cause. It could have been a network issue or something else. And I'll yield to Commissioner.
Chair. Commissioner.
Just going to supplement what Ms. Henry said, is that some of our IT systems and issues that occur are because of we're connected with with systems that are external to North Carolina. And it's frustrating when this happens, but we had a situation where it shut down many of the driver license offices for hours because somebody was doing a construction project and had the bulldozer, I believe, on top of where the line was, and people couldn't access it. It shut down driver license offices because they were on top of the line. So we're now looking at how can we have dual IT capability so that if one line goes down, we have another one to fall back on. But it is maddening whenever there are things outside of our control that shuts anything down. And I've spoken with Secretary Boyd about it and with DIT. And but sometimes it happens because of external forces, not us upgrading. Something's happened in the system that we're connected to.
Just one follow-up. Another opportunity was a licensed inspector, emission inspector who ran his service station or garage. He goes back after completes it. He puts it in the system as now being approved so that the person can renew their sticker. The person calls back and says, "You haven't done it yet." So the owner of this inspection station told me that he spoke to DMV locally and they told him that we still use dial-up. There's no way they can do anything else to email it to get it updated, so that when those people go home, they kind of expect it to be updated. Is this part of the upgrade that we move from the fax machine to more modern stuff? Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will check on that. What's Gaston? I will check on that for Gaston County because most of the inspection station, at least I was under the impression that all of the inspection stations were now electronic. So once they submit that inspection, within an hour, they should have it in the system. Now that could be to the fact, and I just inspect my daughter's car at a dealership, and he said we batch them together. So that's why I gave that hour. And then we submit a number of them at the same time. So it could be how they're processing, but I will make sure that the team looks at that to see if there's some that are dialed up.
We do have someone with the Commissioner's Office that like to speak to that as well. And then we have Nick with our resources.
Deputy Commissioner Tim Hayworth from DMV. We do have some of those systems, which what we call them, they're called POTS lines. And what POTS stands for is plain old telephone systems. And we are in the process of moving those over to a new system, but a lot of that depends, it's vendor driven. So those emission stations, they have to purchase the equipment in order to do that. So we have been meeting with vendors regularly and are offering that equipment. Hopefully people will buy into that and soon we'll be away from that old system. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Rudow, just to answer your question before about the online split. So DMV was required to post a performance dashboard online in the 2017 budget, and I just pulled that up. And essentially, over the last year, for motor vehicle registrations, 2/3 of those transactions have been in the office, with 1/3 online. And for driver's license, pretty similar split, just under 2/3 in the office and a little over 2/3 online, or 1/3 online, rather.
Thank you. No, I think that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative.
Just want you to know, we're working on a Trivial Pursuit version of on acronyms, and you guys are in the lead.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I'm like, yes.
Forgive me, thank you so much. Just curious, I know that the General Assembly has invested heavily in modernization for the DMV over time. You guys presented that last time around, and I'm excited to see some movement. Can you tell me where that money is gone and what in the last 2 years since you were up here before, and what efficiencies you've made with the money since then?
Go back to this slide. That money, the money that has been invested are those first two lines that are still sitting in our budget to be spent. That's what those first 4 lines for saddles refactoring, stars replacement, lights replacement are now going to be utilized for our DMV application systems replacement. So we have not spent that money. It is still sitting there to be spent once we identify the best solution for the state of North Carolina.
Follow-up, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. So specifically about stars, I mean, I think you guys are moving in the right direction. I was very excited to see some updates and efficiencies, but yet it feels like we got those answers 2 years ago. So can you give me an idea about when you guys are going to be spending that money and when can we expect to see some improvement in that area?
We are in the process right now today of doing market research to see what is out there. I think you had stepped out of the room when I spoke about the fact that we were looking at refactoring, moving forward with refactoring, and then determined that it wasn't the best approach because refactoring saddles alone, saddles being the driver's license application, is the heart of the solution. And we still have to make sure that all of those other connections operate. Vehicle services, lights, inspections, all of those things. So we are in the process today of looking at doing market research with Gartner to see if there is a cost solution. A couple of years ago, saddles refactoring was the approach. With the security concerns that we have today and the things that are out there, we needed to take a step back. And we visited Texas, we were marketing after 2 years ago. Texas was the state that we were saying, hey, you did refactoring, how did you do? We had an opportunity to talk to them. They're getting ready to pull that all out and rewrite it because it is not working. The code is unmaintainable. They can't support it. So my answer to you is I can't give you a date of when we're going to spend the money, but we're not going to spend the money frivolously. We're going to look at what is the best solution for North Carolina. And I think the direction has changed. We have been instructed to look at replacing all of DMV applications and not just one subset of that because of the connectivity and the complexity of the applications.
Follow up. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate the Texas model, but there's other states that have modernized many years back with less investment. I'm looking forward for North Carolina to be able to say that one day soon. Thank you.
We're moving forward.
Thank you for your due diligence.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Logan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. I would like to address the commissioner, please. Just going back on some of the things that you were saying, the places you have visited. Have you visited our Huntersville office in Mecklenburg County?
Yes, I have. It was last year.
And I know you probably saw the long lines that wrapped around the building. And I know before your time, I'm very happy to hear about this queue anywhere.
Yes, ma'am.
Because before you stepped in, and I called and talked to some people, made this recommendation because I thought of how the restaurants handle people coming in with reservations, because it was really unfair to have people standing out there in all types of weather. And they, like I said, actually wrapped around the building. And I just heard this morning that there's no one standing outside the Huntersville office. And I just wanted to let you know. And like I said, I'm there quite a bit because, of course, that's what Highway Patrol office is, and I visit them quite often. So, like I said, but I'm glad that this someone keeps an eye on Mecklenburg County, because you make a reference to you visit a lot of offices here around Wake County.
Yes.
So we get a lot of complaints about what's going on in Charlotte area, but in your career fairs, and I was talking to Representative Loftus here. Do you have any plans to hold career fairs in the Charlotte metro region?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I've heard Charlotte was coming up in one of the locations. It wasn't on the list for February, March, and April, but I recall that Charlotte is an area where we have participated. I'll check with our HR team. I've visited Mecklenburg County quite often, and that is actually where our greatest needs are. Mecklenburg and Wake. Now, every district, every office is important, but where we have the greatest vacancy rates and where the greatest population increases are happening are in Charlotte Meck and then the Triangle. And many of the offices that we have are older offices. And when we reach the state fire marshal limitation, we can't have people inside. So that's why it's so important that folks use the QR codes, the buzzers that we have, as we announced this week, we're having appointments in the morning. So if you have an appointment, you won't have to wait in line outside, but it's going to take a while. Hopefully folks realize walk-ins afternoon, appointments in the morning. And if you're in a more rural location, probably have walk-ins throughout the day, by and large. But Huntersville, I remember visiting there, and some days there are no lines, some days there are. But with the changes in place, you'll see, like today, you said there are no lines. You'll see more improvements as we go.
Follow up
Yes.
just quickly, and you're exactly right. But the problem with Huntersville is that they were not letting anyone, the seats were empty inside. They were not letting anyone, and this was after COVID. And like I said, I was there and I was asking a question. They were not letting anyone in the building. The seats were empty. They were making everyone. And I asked the first sergeant there, he said, they don't let anyone in the building.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Deputy Commissioner Boyd Millette and I, along with our chief deputy, we issued a bulletin directing offices not to do that anymore. There, as you can imagine, with 115 offices and the significant number of employees, not everybody gets the memo, but we've been loud and clear about we're open for business. So if that happens again, let me know. But we issued an order or a bulletin directing folks to let them in. And so long as they do not go beyond the state fire marshal code, the state building code, then they come inside. Thank you.
Okay, to follow up. Just to let us know when you're gonna do these job fairs, with myself and Representative Loftus.
Sure.
And we can coordinate it and get them out to constituents.
I will, upon my return to the transportation building, I'll consult with our HR team and find out what other job fairs we have signed up for, and be delighted to share that with you and other members of the committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Yes.
Hey, final comment. You guys are really doing the yeoman's work of state government. I oftentimes say that DMV is the welcome mat to all state government, and we have been currently slamming the door in our constituents' faces. So I'm super excited to hear that you're going to do everything that you can to improve that experience for our clients, our customers, and our constituents. You also say that the problem is that you don't have people. But just like in the private market, they have that same issue. When you have a labor shortage or problem, you have to modernize your services.
Correct.
Because then you will not have the need for those jobs that you cannot fill. I'm very disappointed to not see that there's been movement in these modernizations when you guys are still coding in COBOL. That is very disappointing to me, especially after the significant investment that this body continues to make in this agency. So I really am looking forward under your leadership to see some positive movement so that we can be better stewards for our customers and North Carolina as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you're near the end of the interview. Thank you, Senator. We are making tremendous strides. There's much more work to do. As you heard from Ms. Henry, that when this committee last heard from DMV, there was one direction that was going, and to be good stewards of our tax dollars. When we learned that decision was inappropriate and not the best way to go, we've turned the ship a different way. We're going to modernize the entire system, and thank you for your ongoing support and patience as we turn the entire system around, and we'll have a better and different DMV in just a few short years, and hopefully we'll see changes now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Commissioner Goodwin and his staff for coming today. It's a great presentation. A lot of people had a chance to answer some questions that's been going on in our districts, and we appreciate all of you being here today, and staff for all your hard work in our committee. And next week we will not meet here. We'll be meeting in 643 for big appropriations. So don't forget that and come down here. And you all have a great weekend. Thank you for being here. Adjourned.